It has never been more clear that we are in a severe climate crisis. California, which had a record-breaking wildfire season last year, is already on pace to surpass that. 93% of the American West is currently experiencing drought conditions. Last week, a town in Canada set the country's record, 121 degrees, and then was promptly engulfed by a wildfire that destroyed 90% of their village, 90%. Portland, Oregon hit 3 consecutive records at the end of June, which killed 116 people. A new study concludes that this extreme heat will be virtually impossible without, quote, human-caused climate change. The study's not yet peer-reviewed, but the AP calls their methods credible. And if none of this screams apocalypse to you, sea creatures are literally cooking in their own shells. Yet much of the world continues as if everything is fine. We're still extremely dependent on fossil fuels, making possible oil spills like this one last week in the Gulf of Mexico more likely. But there's a very good reason that people haven't been focused on this enough. And of course, it has everything to do with politics and big money. And there are some very, very rich, very self-interested people and industries who've been paying big money to make sure that you don't pay attention. In a memo for Republicans in 2001, consultant Frank Luntz instructed them to scrub their vocabulary of global warming because it had catastrophic connotations, and rely on another term, climate change, which suggested a more controllable and less emotional challenge. And it clearly worked. And oil companies like ExxonMobil have been lobbying against climate action from the very beginning. And it's still happening today. A senior lobbyist for Exxon told an undercover reporter that the company had been working to weaken key aspects of President Biden's flagship initiative, the climate crisis, and that he's speaking to Senator Joe Manchin's office every week. Manchin's spokesperson claimed the lobbyists greatly exaggerated their relationship. Okay. I'm joined now by Congressman Ro Khanna of California, chair of the House Oversight Environment Subcommittee, and Charlie Pierce, writer-at-large for Esquire. And Congressman Ro Khanna, I want to start with you first. Let me play for you a piece of the Greenpeace undercover video. Take a listen.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we hide our science? Absolutely not. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that.
I'm required now to read their statement. Exxon lobbyist Keith McCoy said, "I'm deeply embarrassed by my comments and I allowed myself to fall for Greenpeace's deception. My statements clearly do not represent ExxonMobil's positions on important public policy issues." Exxon CEO Darren Woods said, "We condemn the statements and are deeply apologetic for them, including comments regarding interactions with elected officials." Yeah, okay. Should these men be called to testify in Congress about these statements, Congressman?
Joy, they should be called. They will be called. They're going to show up to our committee in September. It is appalling that every other industry has shown up to Congress. Tech CEOs, defense contractors, the pharmaceutical industry, the Wall Street industry. Who do these fossil fuel executives think they are that they don't have to show up in Congress? That's going to change. We are prepared to use whatever tool is necessary. They will be showing up and answering the questions of members of Congress.
You know, Charlie, isn't the fact that who they think they are is the people who own the United States and own the government, and they feel that they are in complete ownership, not just of Republicans, but some Democrats who are in oily states, no?
Well, oily states, coalish, I guess would be the word, states. Yeah, I mean, any state that's dependent upon the extraction industries. But this is a playbook we've seen before, Joy. This is exactly what the tobacco companies did.
Correct.
They knew all along that nicotine was addictive. They just wouldn't tell anybody. Exxon, there's documented evidence that the oil companies knew exactly what carbon was doing in the atmosphere long before everybody except, I guess, Jim Hansen did. And you know, they kept it to themselves. So yeah. This is not, I mean, this is the way American corporations, which by and large lost any, pretense of a social conscience somewhere around the 1980s, this is the way they operate.
Yeah, because they want money, money, money. You wrote this, Charlie, in Esquire. You said the vaccinations are quick, easy, and free, and yet there's an actual movement gathered to resist the whole idea. If we can't convince our fellow citizens to do this, how in the name of God are we going to convince them to make the sacrifices that the climate crisis inevitably will force upon us? And while I'm reading Charlie, I'm going to ask you a question, Congressman. Isn't the problem here with, we even talk about this a lot in our team when we talk about doing these stories on climate, that whenever you do climate or COVID, it reads to a lot of the public as you're telling me what to do. You're telling me I have to wear a mask. You're telling me I have to get a vaccination. You're telling me I can't drive my SUV. And so anything that reads as you're telling me what to do, people reject it. They don't want to hear it. So my question is, how do we take action in a governmental sense when Americans won't even save their own lives by taking a free vaccine?
Joe, I think most Americans want to take action on the climate. Many want to be stewards of the land. They don't want to live next to pollution. The problem has been that big fossil fuel industry have spent millions of dollars spreading climate misinformation, saying that we don't have a climate crisis, it's just climate change, that it's not human caused, saying that we can just tweak things and everything will be fine. So the American people are up against millions of dollars of self-interested advertising that's not disclosed. And I think a congressional hearing will change the game, just like when big tobacco came before Congress and had to explain what they're doing. Big fossil fuel industry executives will have to explain what they're doing to the American public, and the American public will not put up with it.
Yeah, and Charlie, you're a word guy. I mean, the reality is Democrats have to stop playing on Republicans' turf. Stop saying climate change. That's Frank Luntz's words, that he's professionally created to create disinformation. He's good at it. But why are we saying climate change? It's a climate crisis. It's a crisis.
That's what,
Stop talking like that.
I deliberately stopped using climate change on the blog that I write when I heard about the Frank Luntz connection. I've been calling it a climate crisis. A while back, in the last book I wrote, I went to a place called Shishmaref in Alaska, which is a barrier island above the Arctic Circle, and it's going away. I mean, because the sea ice doesn't form anymore, and because basically what that place is the place where typhoons go to die. They go up the east coast of Asia, and then what they used to do is they used to beat themselves to death on the sea ice, but there's no sea ice anymore. So you're getting typhoons in the Arctic, and it's eating away the permafrost, and this place is gradually disappearing.
We're very
The
quickly
people
go back
there
to you.
know.
Yeah, no, oh, absolutely. Last question to you very quick. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but I got to get you to comment on Fox News getting into the weather business. Because to me, that's just another opportunity for them to lie and create disinformation that gets people killed and kills the planet. Your thoughts?
Is that for me?
That's for you, Charlie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think this is just what we need right now. Is they're going to find some Tucker Carlson of meteorology to tell us everything's okay. Meanwhile, Chicago is having problems with Lake Michigan now.
And Congressman, the last question then to you then, if you're up against a wall of disinformation that includes Rupert Murdoch putting his, gnarly fingers in the game to try to add, to his already, monstrosity of disinformation, I wonder, just as a legislator, what do? You're up against all of this money and power.
You are, and you ask for disclosure. Here's the hypocrisy. No one is questioning their First Amendment rights. If the Exxon executive CEO wants to stand up there and say, we are for pollution, we are for misinformation, and we are lying to the American public, he has the right to do that. The problem is that they're acting as if they're for green energy. They're acting as if they're responsible stewards. And they have had an election where they're now sustainable, people who believe in sustainability on their board of directors. I think change is coming. This is a moment we're going to hold them accountable.
And they're hoping Republicans take over the entire government so that there will never be anything done about climate. And even if they kill the planet, they just want their cash. It's sad and it's wicked. Congressman Ro Khanna and Charlie Pierce, thank you very much. Okay, before we go to break, we have an update on the crisis in Haiti. 6 people were arrested in connection with the assassination of President Jovenel Moise. Several media outlets citing Haiti's Minister of Elections reported that at least one of them was an American citizen. The State Department said it couldn't confirm that yet. 7 other suspected individuals were killed in a gunfight with police. The assassination has generated confusion about who's the legitimate leader in charge of the country right now. Prime Minister Claude Joseph, who was the acting prime minister before the assassination, has assumed leadership with the backing of police and the military. Yesterday, Joseph declared a 2-week state of siege. Tonight's absolute worst is next, so don't go anywhere.
That took care of the climate change broadcast today as we sit and watch and watch and watch. And as you have the climate change deniers such as Donald Trump that continue to want to feed hypocrisy into people's minds, In the meantime, the damage is still being done. It's not only being done on this side of the continent, but it's being done on the other side of the continent. It's basically being done on the 7 seas. Please take these things seriously in regards towards burning excess amount of fossil fuels, downsizing from a gas guzzler to a more efficient automobile. Even though you got money, doesn't mean you have to keep all the lights on and all the air conditioners on and all the heaters on. Please be conservative with our energy, because right now it is a crucial time in history for not just us as Americans, but for the world. Thanks again for listening. Good luck to all of us, and once more we end the show. Shalom. Thank you. Bye.